Okay, everyone, so we're going to get started in about 2 more minutes. We have an overflow room in room 717 for those of you who haven't been able to grab a seat here. So 717 is the overflow room. We'll be streaming the contents of what's happening in this room in the overflow. So 2 more minutes. Okay, everyone, so if you could take your seats, please. Again, if you're having a problem finding a seat in this room, there's an overflow room in 717, which is directly down the hall. When you walk out of the door, turn left. It's the last room on the right, and we'll be streaming the contents of what's happening in this room into the room there. So thank you and good morning, everyone. My name is Craig Willingham. I'm the Deputy Director here at the CUNY Urban Food Policy Institute. We're a research and action center focused on identifying evidence to address urban food problems, and we're really pleased to be able to host this event here today. This discussion really is a part of a longer set of discussions that we've been having with colleagues around the city for a number of years, and as you can see by the turnout, this is a very important issue to many, many people, and we're happy that we're able to bring together some really fantastic speakers to be able to think through what sugar-sweetened beverage policies could look like in New York City. But before we begin, I'd like to start off by thanking our advisory committee for this project. Adrian Abate, Executive Director of the Staten Island Partnership for Community Wellness, Project Director for their Tackling Youth Substance Abuse Program. Andrew Goodman, Clinical Professor at New York University. Charmaine Ruddock, Project Director for Bronx Health Reach. Greg Mihailovich, American Heart Association NYC Director of Grassroots Advocacy. Jenny Clapp, Director of Healthy Eating Initiatives at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Jim O'Hara, Director of Health Promotion Policy at the Center for Science in the Public Interest. And Nick Freudenberg, Distinguished Professor of Public Health here at the City University of New York, and also the Director of our CUNY Urban Food Policy Institute. So again, the decision to call this roundtable was made with us and a few of our colleagues who were all thinking through some of the ways that sugary drink policy could be changed in New York City. And moreover, New York City, which has enacted some of the most groundbreaking public health policies over the last 20 or so years, is in a prime position to tackle this issue. And the progress made on SSB policy in cities like Philadelphia, Boulder, Oakland, and Seattle indicates that the time is now. With that in mind, before I introduce our keynote speaker, I'd like to take a brief moment to review the agenda for today and to provide a little bit of background into the impact of SSBs in New York City and why this issue is so vitally important. So, just a brief overview of our agenda. Our keynote speaker, Javier Morales, is going to provide some remarks directly after my intro. Then we'll go directly into the roundtable discussion, and after that we'll have a breakout session where we'll look at some of the ways that your ideas can be brought to the table to address sugar-sweetened beverage issues in New York City and what might be some possible ways forward for SSB policy here. I won't go through everyone's bio right now because they'll get a chance to talk about themselves when they come up. So in the interest of time, I'll just move forward. So why sugary drinks? Sugary beverages are the single largest source of added sugar in our diets, and U.S. children and adults, it contributes to over 45% of the daily added sugar intake. So as you can see here, the decline in the consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages is really something that we can be proud of, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done. One 20-ounce sugary drink can contain more added sugar than the recommended limit for an entire day. In addition, sugary drink consumption is associated with weight gain, cavities, and increased risk of chronic diseases. Also, in 2015, it was found to be positive association between sugary drink consumption and obesity among adults in New York City. In this slide, we see that sugary drink consumption really is something that, in particular affects communities of color. And what we think that New York City, being that we have a fairly large community of color population, SSB policy is one of the more vital ways that we can have a strong impact on public health. We also see here that sugary drink consumption among white youth declined between 2013 and 2015, but not among Black and Latino or Asian youth. Latino and Black children ages 0 to 5 had 3 to 4 times higher rates than white children in sugary drink consumption, and Black and Latino youth had higher rates of consumption than white youth at all age levels. This really reinforced some of the same issues around consumption and race and ethnicity. And the Department of Health put out a great report, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 months ago, on Latino health in New York City that outlined some of these issues. And if any of you are interested in this, I highly recommend checking out that report. So sugary drink consumption among New York City public high school students by race and ethnicity looking at 2013 and 2015, we see that these issues across race tend to persist, and that these are the sort of things that, particularly when we look at targeted marketing of sugar-sweetened beverages in communities of color, are issues that really need to be addressed in a number of different ways, not just dealing with issues around balance and diet, but also at the policy level, particularly around how we can work to limit the consumption of SSBs. And this is one of these maps that we here in New York City tend to look at pretty regularly. And we overlap different sorts of issues, whether it be heart disease, diabetes, obesity, et cetera. And we tend to see a number of the same neighborhoods that pop up. And here we see that sugary drink consumption varies by neighborhood, and 4 in 10 East and Central Harlem, North and Central Brooklyn, and South Bronx residents drink 4 or more sugary drinks per day, compared with 1 to 10 of Upper West Side residents. And again, these sorts of rates play out when we layer different sorts of maps over the top, when we're looking at different diet-related diseases. So some of the successes, New York City has had a fantastic response when it's come to using the power of marketing and media to get out messages around sugar-sweetened beverages. These are some of on the left-hand side, these are some of the ads that the Department of Health has generated, which many of you have probably seen. And when you're getting ready for work in the morning and New York One's on and you see these ads come on, it really kind of reinforces the fact that this is not only a very vital issue, but also the fact that it's something that really takes a lot of time and effort and repeated messaging over and over again to make sure that this is constantly in the front of folks' minds, and that it's something that really gets the same amount of attention that other issues around public health do. And again, the Department of Health has done a great job around their campaigns. Also, helping helping in conjunction with the New York City food standards to restrict the institutional availability of sugar-sweetened beverages, and encouraging community organizations and other city agencies to voluntarily adopt the New York City food guidelines in order to limit the amount of sugar-sweetened beverages in their establishments. On the other side, we have some of the promising starts. The portion cap rule was a great first step, and even though it didn't ultimately get implemented, we know that it was a spark that inspired a number of different organizations and municipalities around the country to start to think about, the sort of tough policies that they could possibly implement in order to address that. In New York State, some of you may remember in 2010, there was an effort to have a state tax on sugar-sweetened beverages, which ultimately wasn't successful, but again, sets the stage for the sorts of policies that we see around the country today and some of the discussions that we're going to have. However, the industry is not going to take this lying down, and as we saw here in New York with a lot of the pushback from